Perfect, and we're live. Yeah, so welcome back, everybody. Today we actually have Georgia. It's our first digital PR guest on the podcast, so very excited for this. Georgia is the co-founder and head of digital PR with Unearth PR. She's been that for just over 3 years now. Is that right, Georgia? 3.5?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, 3.5 years.
Perfect. And how are we today, Georgia? All good? Excited?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Excited. I was just saying to you guys, this is my first ever podcast LinkedIn Live experience, so I'm very excited. Something that should be fun.
Brilliant. Well, I think we'll get into it with, obviously, digital PR it's quite a new industry that's coming up. It's kind of exploded over the last especially last 2 years. How did you get into digital PR, and what's sort of been your journey so far?
Yeah, so for me, I think this is a really common experience in digital PR because it is such a new industry, but I very much fell into it. I started off in traditional PR. I did a couple of internships, and then I actually ended up in a marketing assistant role for a really big national homeware retailer. And I was doing the marketing stuff, radio ads, and I'm sure some people love it, but I just found it so boring. And then I noticed that this was this massive retailer that I was working for, and they didn't have a single PR person, a PR team, anything. So I remember I said to my manager, I was like, oh, I have a really small bit of PR experience, and we were struggling to shift some stock of a product. And I was like, let me give it a go. I'll shove out a press release and see what happens. And so I think we pitched it that morning, and then by the afternoon we had loads of links coming in and coverage, and it had done so well. And then I think maybe 2 weeks later, I was then the PR person for the whole company. No training, it was so off the cuff, no experience, barely any training, and it was just mad. And then did that for 2 years, never had any support. I got all my information off of Twitter, reading SEMrush resources, just literally trying to figure it out. And then it kind of got to a point where I was like, okay, I've been figuring out on my own for 2 years. I need to actually work with people that have experience to grow. So I ended up becoming a digital PR consultant for, I think at the time they were an SEO agency, but I think now they're content performance or something like that. But yeah, basically went into digital PR and learned from SEOs and people that had the more link building experience. And yeah, kind of worked my way up in digital PR, eventually changed jobs, became a digital PR manager, managed a team, and now I run my own agency. So yeah, quite a interesting journey for sure.
Brilliant. Yeah, and being from sort of head of digital PR now and sort of digital PR manager and stuff before, is there any advice? Because I know a lot of more graduates and stuff are getting into digital PR and stuff like that. Is there any advice? It's obviously very hard to gain experience when you're a graduate in any sort of field, but especially in digital PR. What are you sort of looking for when you're hiring for a graduate or an entry-level position?
That's a really good question. It's something that I'm thinking about a lot at the moment because I'm looking to hopefully be able to hire some people in the next 12 months. And in terms of juniors, what would really make someone stand out specifically in digital PR is just honestly just knowledge of the media. I think it can become quite evident when someone's interviewing and they maybe don't read that much of the news, or they're not aware of maybe what's trending, if they don't have any kind of concept of what's being talked about on social media, maybe for example, then that's not that's kind of setting apart an okay person for the job and a fantastic person for the job. So I would say, if you're a junior PR and you're struggling to get a look in when you're having these interviews, just demonstrate knowledge of the media landscape. So talk about the publications you read, talk about a story that you've seen that's maybe gone viral or been really popular and why you think it's worked. And even shouting out journalists that you love, if there's a particular journalist that you always read the work of, that's just going to set you apart as a candidate. So yeah, for me, I would say just having that knowledge of the media landscape is absolutely essential for junior PRs trying to get their first position.
Perfect. And just to sort of follow up on that, do you think it's almost people have to have that curiosity initially to even have a chance in digital PR? It's not another sort of role where you can come in and sort of learn it on the job and then see if you sort of like it. You have to have that sort of passion before you even enter the role.
I think so. I think you have to kind of have a natural ability to be creative and know what's going to work in the media. I think creativity is something that's like quite hard to teach as well. Like there's definitely like different tactics that you can use, like especially in like ideation, to be creative. But if you have that innate creativity and ability to like read and really want to learn about the media, then that is just gonna do wonders for your career. And I think, kind of as I said, it's evident if someone's interviewing, if they don't have that passion, they don't have the creativity. PR is very different to marketing. I do think a lot of the time in marketing, where it's more data heavy, you can learn a lot of it on the job. PR, you have to kind of have, again, that like passion and creativity to begin with.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. Brilliant.
Awesome. I have a bit of a spicy question that I just want to bring up. In terms of AI, has it affected the DPR industry? How do you feel? And I guess anyone that is sort of new or junior in DPR, do you have any advice to them in managing the effects of how AI would have on your industry?
Yeah, that's super interesting. So this is a conversation I was actually having with the digital PR the other day that I was speaking to. And what's becoming quite common is in PR, in this aspect isn't common, but in terms of the responses we get, what we tend to do if we're looking for like a case study or we're looking for an expert, we'll send out, like, you probably see them on Twitter, it will be a digital PR saying something like, oh, we're looking for, I don't know, a sleep expert, like get in touch, we'd love to work with you on a campaign. So we source kind of experts that way. And something that's really interesting that's coming up a lot is we're getting a lot of responses from AI. So we'll get this sleep expert that's like saying, oh, I've got all these fantastic qualifications and here's an expert commentary for your campaign. And then we'll go and we'll have a look and this expert doesn't exist. Or like if you ask for a headshot, they suddenly don't respond, or they send you like a very obviously AI generated headshot. So it's like with AI now, like in PR, if you're sourcing external experts or case studies, you have to be so careful that everything is like legitimate and accurate. And it's the same for journalists as well. Like they're now looking at all the content they're being sent from PRs and ensuring that it's all legitimate, because you could easily get blacklisted even if it's not your fault and you've accidentally used an expert you didn't realize was AI, and that could affect your career and your relationship. So it's super, super important to double check everything, and in my opinion, not use AI for your own content. Everything that's written from a person, in my point of view, is just so much more authentic and genuine, and journalists definitely prefer that in my experience.
Definitely. I think
in ideation as well, do you like even bring it down to that minute of a level where you wouldn't include AI in, or do you maybe utilize it for assistance there?
I think AI is like really a fantastic tool for things like internally and behind the scenes. So it's more, I would use it for like external content. Like if anything I'm sending to a journalist is written by me or would be written by someone in my team. But in terms of like ideation, I think it can be really helpful. I think just from my experience of using like ChatGPT, it hasn't quite grasped the concept of digital PR yet. A lot of the ideas that it spits out are quite traditional and like brand heavy, but I'm sure it will get there at some point. But it's a great starting point to, if you kind of put in like a really strong prompt, you can get some inspiration and ideas that you can then build off of from it. But yeah, and it's really good for like, sometimes like I use it for like data and categorization. So if I'm looking to like split publications or like segment journalists into different media lists, it can be really helpful to do that as well. So just speeds up the more kind of internal admin tasks, I would say.
Awesome.
Brilliant. And just on the sort of ideation process, I don't know if you want to give away too much like sort of golden insights, but what's involved in sort of your ideation process, and how do you come up with that approach, and how does that obviously change from either client to client or like niche to niche?
Yeah, for sure. So I think for me personally, I mean, everyone's different. Like I'm quite naturally a creative person, but some people maybe struggle a little bit more and have to put more effort into kind of coming up with creative ideas. For me, I suppose this is like a little bit of like a secret. I don't know many people that do this, but I think it's so good. Like every single time I come up with an idea, I have a Google Doc and I put it in there. So even if like I'm just, I don't know, like walking the dog and I think of something really random that could work, I put it in this Google Doc. And I've been doing that for about 5 years now. And honestly, I kid you not, it's like this 50-page Google Doc of like size 11, size 12 font, like massive, just full of ideas. So whenever I'm like ideating, I will just go back to that and like look at keywords and like try and see like what I've come up with before. And oftentimes I won't even like pull an idea directly from it. I will just like see something and that will spark some sort of inspiration. So I think if you haven't done that, like if there are any digital PRs listening or watching, if you don't have a bank of your own ideas, definitely start creating one, because it's like the best like source of inspiration. I would say for me as well, I also do a lot of like mind mapping. And where you said about like different niches to niches, I'll like start with like the most basic thing in that niche. So for example, I work with a bathroom brand. So I'll literally start with bathrooms, and then I'll mind map and I'll think about literally anything that's related to bathrooms, from like, I don't know, like shower steam to like airplane toilets or something, like just literally anything. And then ideas will spur that way as well. And then I keep those mind maps as well, like all on paper in folders, very traditional in that sense. And I'll like look back through them when I'm re-ideating. So yeah, those are like a couple of tips that I definitely recommend.
Brilliant, brilliant. And just one more on sort of ideas from your experience and from being like a manager and a head off. What separates like a good idea from a great idea? It might be also hard to decide, but
no, I think that's a really good question. I think actually, even like since being a manager, managing a team and becoming like a head off for my own agency, I would say like the best bit of like I suppose like a tip or a snippet of info that has helped me is something that I learned way back when I was doing work experience. So this was like literally like 8-9 years ago. I interned at a Reach PLC regional newspaper, and I was like writing really crap stories, like just helping them like put content onto the website. I think I wrote like a story about a new bridge, like very exciting stuff. And and I wrote one piece, and it was about like a woman who had like painted her son's nails, and it was like a really nice, like heartwarming community piece. And it ended up being the top performing piece for that entire month for this like publication. And I was so shocked. I was like, I'm literally here on my work experience. Like, what the hell has happened? And it was because they had posted that piece on Facebook, and it had like got so many comments, so much engagement on it, because it was like rooted in community. It was almost like a UGC kind of piece, so almost like an interview with this woman. And because you create that connection and it's readable, it's shareable, like that just kind of explodes the topic. And then it got republished on The Sun, it was on the Daily Mirror, it kind of went everywhere. So I think for me, what separates a good idea from a great idea is its ability to be shareable on socials. I think as well, like journalists have such high KPIs now when it comes to like coverage views, or sorry, I suppose from their perspective, article views. So if they're seeing that something's landing in their inbox from a PR and they immediately think that's going to do fantastic on Facebook, then they're going to be way more likely to publish it, because that's going to help them hit their KPIs. So it's all about meeting the journalist halfway. And yeah, that's kind of how you get those great campaigns. It's all about the wider impact on like social media mainly.
Brilliant. No, I love that. Love that.
Awesome. I just wanted to move into career progression, and also just to where you are now, co-founding your own company. And yeah, just can you take us through just maybe some of the mindset shifts that happened, that you experienced for yourself, moving from digital PR to like managing a team, then to co-founding Unearth, and any tips that you would give to other DPRs that are looking to level up in their career progression and are just a bit stuck?
Yeah, for sure. So I think probably best to start like from the beginning, from almost like a kind of consultant into a manager. So I think the biggest shift for me was just having self-confidence and self-belief that I was good at my job. I think imposter syndrome comes into it a little bit when you first start, especially in like if you're doing a career pivot a little bit like I did from like marketing to digital PR. You start to get like those feelings of like being a little bit of an imposter, and you really do have to kind of work your way to getting over that to become a good manager, in my opinion. So what I have actually is similar to like my Google Docs situation. I have a Google Drive where I keep track of every single positive comment I get from a client, every single, positive comment from a manager, a coworker. I put all of that into a Google Drive. So if I ever start to feel those like little bits of like imposter syndrome, I would look at that. And again, I've done that for probably around 3 or 4 years now. And that helped me massively when I was becoming a manager, because then it's almost like a bank of like confidence boosting, like self-belief messages, basically. So that's super helpful. I would say that one thing that I've always had positive feedback on from my own managers is that I'm really confident in giving constructive feedback. And I suppose something that is maybe a little bit of a controversial opinion is that I don't think you should be a manager if you aren't able to give constructive feedback. It is one of the most important parts of the job, in my opinion. No one ever grows if their manager is constantly telling them, you're doing great, like this is fantastic. Like you're never going to improve or learn if they're not able to give you that feedback and tell you the truth. So if you're able to give constructive feedback to your colleagues, even when you're not a manager, in a really positive way as well. Like you don't have to say their work is awful, but just like try and help them and help them grow as well. That's a great indication that you will be a good manager. And then obviously if you do that when you are a manager, you get more opportunities to manage larger teams because you're almost putting that your direct reports growth first. So that's helpful. And then I suppose in terms of becoming a co-founder, I've kind of stepped away from like managing teams for the time being, but it's something I want to do in the future. And it all comes back to that kind of self-confidence. When you're working solo, you kind of, if you get a knockback, there's no one to turn around to and be like, oh, that call was awful, and have a little bit of a natter about it and like get over it that way. You do have to kind of pick yourself back up. So I think the main thing for me in career progression in digital PR is just having like absolute confidence and self-belief in yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And how's it the switch been from obviously being able to focus purely on the digital PR aspect to now having your own agency, where as well as focusing on that, you also have to focus on the actual agency itself, like making sure like the sales pipeline's good, you've got clients coming in and things like that. How has that been? How was that? How have you been sort of coping with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big change. So I have now obviously got to like almost go back to my roots a little bit and do like marketing, social media. You've probably seen on LinkedIn, I'm posting like 4 times a week, which is something I never would have done a few years ago. So it is a bit mad. Personally, I love it. My favorite thing ever is like growing businesses. Like I've had smaller businesses prior to this, and like just seeing them grow is like, it's something that I'm really passionate about and which I love. So yeah, I can imagine, like, I suppose for anyone that's maybe listening or watching, if they want to start their own thing, it's important to know that it's not all about delivery. You do have to put in like quite a lot of additional work and a lot of things going on behind the scenes, like processes, like even like formatting, like proposal decks, doing like first draft, second draft, things like that. Negotiating finances, even like tax returns, all the horrible stuff like that. Like there's loads going on. So yeah, for me, I love it, but it's definitely not for everyone. I can appreciate that.
No, definitely not. And on that, I know obviously that is quite a unique experience. Like not every digital will have to go through that, but you even mentioned before that you were out for a walk with your dog and you thought of an idea and stuff like that. How hard is it as a digital PR to be able to switch off? And do you have any sort of tips from people struggling for with a work-life balance?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I find it very, very difficult, and I think I would be a little bit of a hypocrite if I sat here and said work-life balance is so important, blah blah blah, because I'm an entrepreneur. Like I literally work like constantly, but it is so important. I mean, I completely agree with the crowd. I think like even just like having like an evening off or a weekend, like a day at the weekend off, like for entrepreneurs specifically, is really important. Like it can feel like you just want to work all the time to constantly grow your business, and having that time off to just reset, spend time with family is so key. I think more like in terms of digital PR, I suppose it can be quite hard to turn off just because you're constantly switched on because of the media. So I know myself, a lot of digital PRs will have like BBC News notifications on, will have like, I have like loads and loads of like notifications for like Google alerts, like set up for my clients, like all sorts of stuff. So I know that's kind of a universal thing for digital PRs. And what I would say is like, it's really important to take time away from like screens and your phones and almost just make yourself not accessible. So something that I started doing when I was working full-time in agency was I deleted Slack off my phone and emails off my phone. So I don't have, like, if I'm on lunch break, I'm on lunch break, you can't contact me. Similar, like that would have a great effect, like after 5 o'clock or after 6 o'clock, whenever I'd finish, uncontactable, can't get on that stuff. I would always turn off notifications, do not disturb mode, so I could stop getting like BBC notifications, all that kind of thing. But yeah, making sure you have breaks as well. I think the last couple of agencies I've worked at, something that was quite hard for me to transition into was the fact that there were so many meetings. So what I would start doing is time blocking my time. So having like trying my best to make sure there was like 10-minute breaks like in between meetings so you can decompress and then go back into the next one. And I know that can be quite a struggle for senior digital PR. So just giving yourself a little break, not going too hard in the meetings is very important. But yeah, I hope that's helpful. I feel like a bit of a hypocrite talking about that, considering I literally work every single day, but hopefully that's helpful.
No, it is, definitely.
Yeah, no, the screen time thing in the meetings is a big thing. I remember we had on Jessica Redman was one of our first SEO guests that we had on, and she was talking about how she tries to minimize her meetings to 3 or 4 per day max cap, and just because like of screen exhaustion and just like the brain exhaustion that you go through. But yeah, that's very important. My next question is sort of in contrast to Darius's previous question, but you spoke about KPIs recently on one of your posts, which I actually wanted to cover. So you had a little meme showing what digital PR looks like and what it's really like. And I thought it was quite interesting to chat about. So one of the things that stood out to me was the KPIs aspect of it, and redoing clients wanting to make changes and then having to redo roadmaps and things like that. So on the topic of KPIs, how do you consider measuring KPIs effectively? Maybe you can give some advice from when you were a manager, but also now co-founding your own agency, how do you implement sort of KPIs in this aspect as well?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I suppose I have a little bit of like a different or maybe even like controversial approach to KPIs now that I run my own business. My experience in my last couple of agencies and even in-house as well was everything was very KPI driven, and it would be kind of like link KPIs, like link targets or coverage targets, or even like when I was on the traditional side, like coverage view targets as well, like more traditional metrics. But now that I found my own agency, I actually have in place a kind of a qualifying questions when I do discovery calls to essentially ensure that all of my clients actually don't need or want KPIs. So I don't have link targets. I don't have, keyword uplift targets, any sort of organic performance targets. I don't have with my own agency. But what I do is I develop this sort of level of trust with clients to where, although there's no KPI, they know that they're going to start to see long-term impact in our reporting. So our reports cover like everything to do with organic performance, like keyword uplift, and then also your brand statistics as well. So although there isn't like a link target, for example, there's all this information where they can actually see the impact of the work that we're doing. Because my personal perspective, and I know a lot of digital PRs might not necessarily agree with me, but I think link target, even if you have like a kind of link weighting or anything like that, it's all a guessing game and it's all a vanity metric, in my opinion. I think you can say, we'll get 5 links a month. There is no way that you can predict how many links you're going to get a month, because PR is earned media. Like, it's literally a guess. And then if you don't get it, I think there's a lot of pressure on internal teams to be like, okay, well, we have to hit the target, so let's just get any kind of crap link that we can, which isn't great, doesn't get results, doesn't have overall impact. And I think also if you have that link KPI and you get 5 links and it doesn't show impact, you still hit the KPI, but the client's unhappy, which doesn't add up to me. But whereas if you get 1 link and it has loads of fantastic impact and you've seen like keyword like increases off the top of it, then, you know, that's fantastic. So I think, yeah, for me personally, I don't necessarily agree with KPIs in PR. Maybe that will change in the future, but for now, that's my standpoint. And for me, it's all about the reporting and the impact.
I love that. That is very refreshing to look at it that way. And when you were managing people, was that sort of like the general approach that you were going for? Okay, awesome. Yeah, very interesting to see how it'll go.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it was the general approach that I was able to take, but obviously when you work in-house or in the agencies, you do have to kind of just agree like from the top down and go with whatever's working. So I always, you know, when you're working for other people, you just adapt and you make it work. But now that I'm working for myself, I'm able to obviously bring in, you know, my own opinions, which is always great.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome.
Definitely. And Georgia, also at the minute, you have a bit more say with the clients you're working with, compared to like possibly previous roles where you sort of just get given them. But obviously some clients are a lot tougher than others and sort of don't allow you as much sort of freedom with what you can do. How do you sort of come up with like innovative ways to sort of still get coverage and stuff for them or fresh ideas for them?
Yeah, for sure. That's such a pain point, I think, for so many digital PRs. I mean, you have like an amazing client come on board, you think it's going to be fantastic, then all of a sudden you're met with like those of brand team blockers, or there's just loads of internal stakeholders that need to sign things off. Like it's a very, very common problem in digital PR. I think for me, I suppose I can give some practical advice actually, and just kind of talk about some tactics that I would tend to use. So if you're trying to do like reactives and campaigns and they're just not getting signed off, in the background there is work and tactics that you can do. So for example, if the client has like a really extensive blog and they've got loads of content on there, my kind of thought is that if you've got a client blog, it's more than likely all that content has already been through a vigorous sign-off process. So you can kind of bypass that and use the blog content to outreach. Obviously making sure you rewrite it so it's press friendly and you're not going to have duplicate content issues, but you can kind of use the concepts that are in that blog to re-outreach without a massive sign-off process. You can also look back at like kind of more traditional link building tactics, so like unlinked brand mentions, so find where the brand has been mentioned online and try and get a link added in instead of a mention. You can also do things like, instead of just trying to outreach to like main press all the time, if they're worried about things from a brand perspective, you can say, okay, well, we'll move away from that and we'll focus these really niche blogs on these niche blogs that really have quite a lot of SEO value, but won't necessarily have any kind of like brand impact. Sometimes that can be a good way to communicate. Also product PR. I mean, I could go on for ages with all these kind of things, but like product PR, if you've got Christmas coming up, Valentine's Day, you can get some really nice PDP, PLP links. And then one of my favorite ones is playing into your point of contact ego a little bit. So if they're like a marketing manager, say, you can ask to interview them and then outreach their kind of responses to like trade press as well. That can be a really good way to kind of play into their ego and be like, oh, we really want to get you in the press. They don't have to go through vigorous sign-off processes because it's their own words they're signing off. And then you can get some really great trade links as well. So off the top of my head, those are just a few that you can do. But yeah, I could ramble for ages on that.
No, I think a lot of people will find that useful, definitely.
Good.
Yeah, just I wanted to ask one last question to sort of round it up. How important, or do you consider it important to have and develop personal brand as a digital PR, especially with you talking at events like Brighton SEO and just building up your general LinkedIn presence? Do you find it ideally more beneficial just for the business sake of things from Unearth as a co-founder, or do you also benefit from it just as a digital PR in general?
Yeah, I think my answer to this is twofold. I think personal branding, it sounds a bit cringy, but it honestly like has changed my life. Like I would say 70% of my clients at Unearth have come through LinkedIn directly. And I know of a couple that have come through like Twitter and even like TikTok when I used to be active on there. So having a personal brand on all these platforms has literally enabled me to have a business. So, I mean, I can say positive things about it all day. I think if you're in digital PR, it's a fantastic thing to do. I even saw, I can't remember what agency was, but it was a digital PR agency founder posted on LinkedIn the other day that they only hire people that have personal brands, which I thought was maybe a little bit far, but that just goes to show that it's so important and it's so valued. It's essentially if you work for a company and you're posting and you've got on your profile that you work for that company, it's free marketing for them. So you're just going to be a more attractive candidate. My caveat to that, though, as someone who's going to be hopefully employing people soon, is that I don't believe it should actually impact your ability to get a job. And I do encourage this, like, I guess, employer to employer, that if we're just employing people with personal brands, we're essentially only employing the loudest people in the room. And sometimes the loudest people in the room are the best people for the job. The introverts are there too. And like, I know a girl that I worked with previously who was one of the top performers in my team, and she rarely posted on social media. So if people were kind of like bypassing her CV because she didn't have a personal brand, they'd be missing out on a fantastic candidate. So I think it can be amazing if you're looking for a job, like fantastic. If you want to do personal branding, definitely do it. But from an employer point of view, I don't think it should be the be all and end all. Yeah, so kind of a twofold answer.
Oh, perfect. I think that sort of wraps us up perfectly. No, listen, thank you so much, Georgia, for coming on. Really appreciate it. I think that set the bar quite high for any other digital PRs who are going to be coming on and following that up. So a lot of the next person, but no, it's great to have you on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was super fun.
Thank you. Have a great weekend and chat soon.
You too. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
All right.